Finnegans Wake. An American-Irish song, indeed, about an Irish New York bricklayer called Tim Finnegan, who used to drink rather a lot, and one day, climbing his ladder at work, he fell from the ladder right to the ground, and everybody thought he was dead. So they had a wake, they laid out the corpse, and they all began to drink round it. And during the drinking, there was a bit of a row, a bit of noise, a bit of fighting, and a gallon of whiskey flew from hand to hand, and some of it spilt on the corpse of Tim Finnegan. And the result was that the corpse suddenly sprang back to life again, and Tim Finnegan said, "Souls to the devil, do you think I was dead?" A nice little story, and a story that would appeal to an Irish writer like James Joyce, very much a man of the people, because in this story of an ordinary man, he saw a story of man's fall and man's resurrection. In a bigger sense, he saw a picture of man sinning, because sin is one half of creation, and all great creators have been great sinners. And then the cities are built, and man falls. Great men, small men, rise and fall, go on building, go on sinning, all over the world, in China, in France, in America, and man himself, the creator, the sinner, became the subject of the novel that Joyce wrote after his big novel, Ulysses. Ulysses was an attempt to show everything that a man could do in the daylight. But when it came to writing Finnegans Wake, Joyce had to turn to the night time and write a book about a dream. And the hero of this long dream, which is the novel Finnegans Wake, is a pub keeper, an Irish pub keeper, or rather a pub keeper of an Irish tavern, rather like any of these people up there on the wall. He is, however, a foreigner. He is a Scandinavian, and he's a Protestant, not a Celt, and a Catholic. And he knows he's not greatly liked by his customers, they don't trust him, and moreover, he has a very great sin on his soul, a very vague sexual sin, but it's there. And in the dream that he has, he sees himself as sinning man, as great sinning man, who consoles himself for his sin by the knowledge that he has power, that he has the capacity for rule, the capacity for creation. He sees himself, for instance, as another great Irish hero, Jonathan Swift, who loved a couple of girls and shouldn't have loved them because they were really his daughters in God. Sees himself as John Stuart Parnell, who fell in love with Kitty McShea, who was a married woman, and this did no good to his political career. As the dream develops, we get into literature, away from pure history, and Joyce imposes on his dreaming character the figure of Ibsen, who created a personage called the Master Builder, who again fell in love with a young girl and dared God by building high buildings, and then fell. And this general picture of falling man, rising man, is incarnated in this dream character whose name is Humphrey Chimpton Earwicker. Earwicker's a Scandinavian name. Humphrey suggests the hump on the back of all men, the hump of guilt. In the dream, Humphrey Chimpton Earwicker has a stutter, and the stutter is the stutter of guilt. He is potentially a politician, but he knows that the Irish will not easily accept him under the name of Earwicker. So in the dream, the name Earwicker becomes the word earwig. It's translated into French, to Perce Oreille, and then Perce Oreille becomes Perce O'Reilly. So perpetually in the dream, Earwicker is trying to see himself as an Irishman capable of leading the Irish people. But he's committed a sin. We don't know what the sin is. It seems to have happened in the Phoenix Park. It seemed to involve two young girls, two colleens, and everybody's heard about it. And when they hear about it, this is the beginning of the fall of a great man. The fall of any great man, any great politician. The clock on the wall of the pub says 11:32. And this is there to remind Earwicker of something. The song that's been sung about him is about a man falling. Finnegans Wake is a song about a man rising after falling. And if Earwicker looks at this time on the clock, and works out what 1132 means, he will come to the conclusion that falling and rising are combined in the same cycle, because 32 is a symbol of falling. A man falls, anybody falls, at the rate, the velocity, of 32 feet per second. But if we want to give ourselves a symbol of rising again, well, we have to count on all our 10 fingers, and to continue with 11, we have to start again. So 11 is the figure for rising, and 32 is the figure for falling. Not only is 1132 there forever on the clock, the timeless clock of this timeless dream, but it's also there on the calendar. The action of the story of the dream takes place in this year 1132, in the month of February, incidentally, which was the month of Joyce's birth, but a month that looks forward to spring and resurrection. 1132, 11 the symbol of rising, 32 the symbol of falling. And if you come to think of it, a circle both rises and falls at the same time. It contains 11 and 32 at the same time, and man's life is also 11 and 32 all in one. Also on this calendar we see a girl, and this girl has something to do with the motivation, the waking motivation of Earwicker's dream. In the dream, the sexual crime is committed is pretty vague, something to do with a couple of girls in the Phoenix Park. But in actual life, Earwicker is very nearly likely to be guilty of the worst crime known to a narrow community like that of the Catholic Irish. He's going to be guilty of a crime that I don't even speak aloud. This atmosphere, I'm not allowed to write the word down. And in the dream itself, the word is not allowed to be spoken, so we have to change it to this word. Very simple. And this explains, of course, why Earwicker is an earwig and why so many characters in the dream appear as insects. Why, for instance, this girl appears as a maybug or a butterfly, a gossamer creature flying above the reach of men's hands. Of course, it is Earwicker's daughter. Her name is Isabel, or Izzy, and she appears here as she appears in the dream, in duplicate. Perpetually, she is seen looking at herself in a mirror, kissing herself, the great eternal temptress, the teaser, whom Earwicker wants because, in a curious way, he's being loyal to his family. He wants to keep sex in the family, and his wife is aging. They're both past the stage of being sexually attracted to each other. So there we are. Isabel, Izzy, who gives her name, indeed, to the place where the pub is, Chapel Izzard, Iseult, Isolde. And there she is also as a symbol which has been found throughout history. She is Kitty O'Shea, she is Cleopatra, she is Madame du Barry, she is all women who seem to offer themselves but remain as remote as twittering, flittering insects. I've mentioned Earwicker's wife. I would say that Earwicker is probably about 50 and his wife is presumably about the same age. They sleep in the same bed this Saturday night while Earwicker has his dream, but they no longer touch each other. There's no longer any sexual commerce. And yet, they are solid images of man and woman. So solid that Joyce is able to turn both Earwicker and his wife almost into algebraic symbols. There's Earwicker. He's always there as an E. And the E not only stands for his surname, but also for everybody. He is all of us. When he's standing upright like that, he's a man, vigorous. But when he is on his back like that, he is very much the insect he appears as so often in his dream. A creature on its back with its legs waving in the air. But he can be converted into some great god, some ancient monument, some monument as ancient as Finn MacCool, the Irish god giant who is contained in the idea of Finnegan. There he is, as solid and as permanent and as eternal as, say, Stonehenge. Now, the two sons whom Earwicker has, in addition to this very seductive daughter of his, are, in a sense, made out of these two symbols. The sons are given various names. They're twins and called Kevin and Jerry. But throughout the book itself, throughout the dream, they appear as Shem and Sean, Jim and John. And if we look into Joyce's own life, we can see that that's where they have their spring, because, after all, James Joyce was Jim, or Shem, and his brother Stanislaus was called, very frequently, Brother John. They're twins. Each of them is only half of the egg, the great Humpty Dumpty egg of the father. And to symbolize this lack of primal strength, primal glamour, Joyce does this with these symbols. He says that Sean is no more than his father without the penis. His father totally lacking libido, lacking sexual strength. And the other son, Shem, Jim, the penman, the poet, derives his creative flow from his mother, but he is not the great life-giving delta that Anna Livia Plurabelle is. So this is how he appears. The book resolves itself then not merely into a great symphony of sound, but also into a very simple pattern of geometry. What happens in the book? Well, what happens chiefly is that Earwicker moons hopelessly at this image of his daughter who loves only her own image. And when he has committed this crime in the Phoenix Park, he is driven out of life, buried under Loch Ness, or as Joyce puts it, under Loch and Ness. And now the two sons take over their father's substance, eat it, and fight between themselves for the mastery of the world. They fight, and in fighting, they use up energy. They don't create. They merely oppose each other. And very frequently they appear as such characters as Jack Dempsey, Jim Sharkey. But in history, in the bigger world of history, they are Cain, Abel, Napoleon, Wellington, Parnell, Isaac Butt, any two opposed brothers who, in our own age, seem to typify the state of the political world. We are a world of warring parties. We are a world of warring brothers. And, says Joyce in the book, in effect, what we all want is to get past this stage of division, this stage of wasted energy through contention, and try and arrive back, as the circle turns, to that old image of the authoritative father, the aristocratic ruler, and inside him, the god, the giant, like Finn McCool, whose name is contained in the name of Tim Finnegan. Finnegans Wake, like Ulysses, is a book about Dublin. It ransacks Dublin. And although Joyce lived out of Dublin for the greater part of his life, Dublin was the one city that lived on in his brain and was the only subject for his books. I suppose Dublin is the ultimate city. It's small enough for people to know each other. It's a city built upon drink, built upon social, if not sexual, intercourse. A city in which man is aware of himself as a citizen. And in Finnegans Wake, the ultimate achievement is to build a city like Dublin. Every man has it in himself to be a builder. Even a pub keeper is building a kind of society. And so we're not surprised when, towards the end of the book, Earwicker ends up not just as the sinning family man, but as the god himself, Finn McCool, whom Joyce sees as the ultimate image of Finnegan, the builder, Tim Finnegan of the song. But every city has to have a river to be built upon. Man is not complete without woman. And just as Dublin is built on the River Liffey, so Earwicker, or Finnegan, the ultimate family man, owes everything to this force, this flowing, various, changing, unchanging force that is femininity and is ultimately incarnated in the river. So at the very end of the book, it isn't man we hear from, but woman. And the particular woman we hear from is the wife of Finnegan, the River Liffey, who is aware that man changes, man is untrustworthy, man yearns for younger flesh. But she herself growing old, the river, with the filth of man's building on her back, will flow into the sea. And in the sea she'll be reborn, she'll rise into the air as clouds, and the clouds will pass down past the city, upstream, and fall as rain, a refreshing river. So if man is a cycle, woman is a cycle too. And the two cycles geared together produce human life. The book seems to end with the word the. You can't end a book with the word the, so you have to start at the beginning again and find that the book begins with the ending of a sentence, and the book ends with the beginning of a sentence. In other words, it's cyclical, it's circular, like life itself, celebrating the process of building and falling and building again, and celebrating that natural process which we see in water, whereby river flows into sea, and sea becomes cloud, and cloud becomes rain, and rain becomes river, and river becomes sea, and sea becomes cloud, and cloud becomes rain. And the whole mad cycle of life goes on forever.